Before we move on to the series presentation and then the panel discussions to be moderated by my colleague, Hyun-Jung Lee. So I'm very pleased to invite two ADB management level speakers who will share views about the APG to set the stage of this session. Our first speaker for the opening remarks is Mr. Winfred Wicklin, who is the Director General of the ADB Southeast Asia Department. He leads the planning and delivery of the ADB goals, strategy, and the work plan in Southeast Asia. Our next speaker for this opening remarks is Mr. Joseph Zvegalic, who is the Deputy Director General of the Economic Research and Development Impact Department. And he oversees the department work plan, ensuring the quality outputs of the various researches and the managing staff and the resources and advising on operations to meet the departmental goals. With that, I'd like to call on first Mr. Vinny onto stage to share his views and remarks.
Thank you very much, Jong-Woo, and very good morning to you all. Let me just. So it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all here for this deep dive on the APG, the ASEAN Power Grid. We're going to look at the dimensions of its economic impact on the energy security and climate resilience. A very timely conversation. It's shining a spotlight this morning on one of ASEAN's most ambitious and most prominent important regional initiatives, one that has gained a really remarkable momentum, especially in the last couple of years. ASEAN is home to, as you know, 680 million people, one of the fastest growing economic areas in the world. With that comes growth in energy demand, and we expect that that growth to become higher and higher. I think the projections, my colleagues tell me it's expected to triple by 2030, but given the developments around data centers, AI, and digitalization, that may even go up steeper. So in short, energy access and availability is fast becoming a critical constraint on economic growth and jobs in the region. At the same time, as Jong-Woo noted in its introduction, the region still very strongly depends on fossil fuels, despite the vast potential of renewable energy in the region. So then we have a triple challenge. We have to meet, as a region, we have to meet rising demand, we have to attract sustainable investment, and we have to deliver on net zero commitments. So enters the ASEAN Power Grid, which really is emerging as a long-term regional solution, as an enabler, a powerful enabler, specifically an enabler of energy security, of energy reliability and affordability for growth and jobs, an enabler of system resilience, so that the homes and businesses can keep the light on during disruptions, and an enabler of sustainability by lowering the costs of renewable energy and accelerating decarbonization. But beyond energy, I should also say that APG is it's a driver of deeper regional cooperation and integration in the region, really turning the ASEAN political commitment into shared infrastructure, into shared prosperity. So of course, realizing the APG visions will be highly complex. Technical systems, legal, regulatory, cross-border transactions, subsea cabling, supply chains, financing, each of those requiring massive coordination across multiple countries and across multiple sectors. And that's why the strong and strategic partnerships are absolutely mission critical, and this is where we believe ADB brings added value. So in response to requests from the ASEAN Secretariat, Kun Kanchana is here, on request of energy and finance ministers from ASEAN, the ADB is working with the World Bank, with the ASEAN Secretariat, with the ASEAN Center for Energy, with key development partners. We have some here, the EU, for example, and others, working together to advance an APG financing initiative, which is a joint platform to align, bring together our efforts for project preparation and for mobilization of financing for various APG-related projects. We, from ADB side, we are ready to contribute our full suite of instruments, our toolkit, and as announced by our President Kanda at the ASEAN Finance Ministers meeting and also last week at the ASEAN Leaders meeting on the sidelines of the ASEAN Leaders meeting, ADB is prepared to invest up to $10 billion over the next decade for APG interconnection projects. And of course, we are also looking at grids upgrades, which are critical, and clean energy power generation. We are also working through the ASEAN Infrastructure Fund, which is co-owned with regional finance ministries to establish a new regional connectivity facility, which will help us address bankability and project preparation in development with other partners. This initiative, all these initiatives really have been warmly welcomed by the ASEAN ministers, and they have asked the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank together, closely, jointly, to work on project preparation and financing to coordinate that, have a strong hand in the coordination. So against this backdrop, today's session is a great opportunity for us to explore the potential impact along the dimensions I mentioned of the ASEAN Power Grid, and also to discuss how we can seize the opportunities while staying realistic with eyes wide open about the challenges ahead. So as the momentum around the APG is building, let's use today to think together about how we can turn the momentum into action and action into success. Thank you very much.
Good morning, colleagues and distinguished guests. On behalf of ADB's Economic Research and Development Impact Department, it is my pleasure to warmly welcome you to this deep dive on ASEAN Power Grid. I hope to build on the insightful comments from my colleague Vinny Wickland, DG of the Southeast Asia Department, who underscored the strategic importance of the grid to both regional cooperation and energy transition in Southeast Asia. Today we gather with a shared purpose to take a closer look at the ASEAN Power Grid, both as technical infrastructure project and a transformative regional initiative. This undertaking has enormous potential to enhance energy security, accelerate economic integration, and advance climate resilience across ASEAN countries. In this workshop, we will delve into how we can make the power grid stronger, smarter, and more interconnected, which is necessary to help us meet rising energy demand as our economies grow and rapidly digitalize, and as our people move to the cities. Grid interconnection offers tangible benefits. It lowers the cost of electricity, enables more efficient cross-border energy trade, and strengthens system resilience in the face of demand shocks and supply risks. Southeast Asia is home to over 680 million people, and posting an average annual economic growth of at least 4% annually. So it is positioning itself as a global manufacturing and industrial hub and emerging as a digital leader, driven by rising investments in digital transformation and data centers. These factors together are fueling energy demand, which is projected to rise by 40% by 2050. Given this trajectory and potential, regionally coordinated ASEAN Power Grid is essential. The ASEAN Power Grid also supports broader regional goals. It positions Southeast Asia as a clean energy hub for economic growth underpinned by renewable energy. Today, around 25% of ASEAN's electricity comes from renewable sources, while the International Energy Agency projects this will rise to 50% by 2040. So integrating the grid through solar, hydro, and geothermal resources across borders can significantly accelerate the process to help build more reliable, more resilient, and more secure power system. Through interconnections, countries can better manage variability in renewable generation and enhance system stability, supporting the energy goals of individual countries, as well as regional competitiveness and long-term climate commitments. As Vinny had mentioned, at the highest level, ADB has reaffirmed our commitment to regional cooperation and connectivity, and the organization is ready to commit up to $10 billion to accelerate the ASEAN Power Grid Initiative. This funding will drive cross-border electricity transmission, modernize national grids, and expand renewable energy products to enable greater regional power trade. As our home is our headquarters here in the ASEAN region attests, we have a strong commitment to the region, but also we have a stake in ensuring that the success of this project is able to benefit everyone. We in ERDI are proud to support these efforts by identifying and filling knowledge gaps through impact assessments and policy prioritization. Through our research, we argue that regional energy cooperation can lower electricity costs, improve system efficiency, and enhance access for underserved communities. While supporting the ADB's operation team's engagement with ASEAN Power Grid stakeholders, we in the research department are also working with different knowledge partners in the region. These range from policy think tanks, international organizations, academic organizations, and we're all looking at the issues affecting the grid, ranging from energy security to sustainable investment opportunities. Today's workshop is part of our knowledge creation and dissemination efforts, bringing together experts, policymakers, and partners to refine our understanding and raise capacity to strengthen the implementation of this vital initiative. As we continue these conversations, our focus is on moving beyond dialogue and towards actionable strategies that can guide implementation and position the ASEAN Power Grid as a model for regional energy integration. So thank you once again for joining us today. I look forward to the insights and perspectives that will emerge from our discussion and to continue our work together towards a more connected and energy secure ASEAN. Thank you.
After the two tall speakers said that I need to lower the microphone against. Thank you very much, both Vinny and Joe, for setting the stage for this APG session by highlighting the important significance, validity, and relevance of APG initiative in supporting energy demand and supply, which is accelerating in the region and also trying to promote the green transition of the ASEAN region, at the same time trying to support and boost the economic growth and development of the region. With that, I think that we are ready to listen to the insightful presentation to be made by the couple of speakers now. So we will be listening to the lead presentation, which will be made by Ms. Kanchana Vanikrom, who is the Director of the Sector Development ASEAN Secretariat. And then she actually oversees and provides strategic guidance for ASEAN cooperation in key sectors, including energy and minerals, food, agriculture, and the forestry, tourism, transport, science, technology, and innovation. So many areas she is covering and overseeing. So I expect the Ms. Kanchana will highlight the significant important context of the APG into the ASEAN development goals. With that, I'd like to invite Ms. Kanchana on the stage.
Very good morning. Such a privilege to be here today and share with you one of the most critical and I would say very transformative initiative in ASEAN, this ASEAN Power Grid or APG. No, I just have to mention that it's not about just the infrastructure like DG Vinny has mentioned. It's a symbol of integration. It's a mechanism for sustainable growth. So it's very essential. It's not just a power line, electricity, but it's economic prosperity. environmental resilience, and also, this is the ASEAN word, regional solidarity. That's why it's gaining a lot of momentum. If you watched the last week ASEAN summit, it's even discussed at the leader summit. So allow me to share with you our experience going through this journey. It's 20 years journey, So let's begin with the big picture. So ASEAN Vision 2045, just endorsed by ASEAN leader last week in Kuala Lumpur, has charted a course for cohesive, competitive, resilient, and sustainable community. And within that vision, the ASEAN Economic Community, the ASEAN Political Security Community, ASEAN Economic Community, that's where energy is part of, and also socio-cultural, and we have connectivity. Each of these pillars I highlighted because they all depend on reliable, affordable, and clean energy. If you read all those community strategic plan, they mention about energy security. So energy is the backbone for development. Without it, there's no inclusive, no industrialization, no smart city, connectivity, mentioned a lot about smart city, no digital economy, and certainly no climate resilience. So that's why in ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, or we call it APEAC, have identified regional power integration as a priority. And APG, or ASEAN Power Grid, is its most ambitious component. So I just have to highlight that this is no longer at the visioning stage. We are at the stage of implementation. So why do we need a power grid that span across the region? People always ask me questions, I just echo what, Vinny and Joe has mentioned here, that first, ASEAN energy demand is set. Well, actually, I have to update my stats. This is from AIDS, Energy Outlook Day. This is very conservative, double by 2050. DG Vinny has mentioned that it could be triple by 2030, right? With all that AI and data center, and we are urbanizing rapidly. Population is growing, and this region, we project that most of the population will be lifted out of the middle income class. More energy consumption will rise dramatically. Second, our energy resources are unevenly distributed. Some countries are rich in hydropower, other excellent in solar or wind potential, but no single country has it all. And third, climate goals demand that we move towards more cleaner energy sources. Renewable energy is often intermittent. Solar energy peak during the day. Wind is not always predictable. So interconnection help us balance all this variability and making renewable more reliable at scale. So, just want to highlight that APG become very indispensable. So the APG is a vision to link our national power systems. It would enable cross-border electricity trade. It will improve reliability, support optimal use of generation resources. I have to say that the idea was first discussed since 1986, actually more than 20 years, like 30 years, and proposed the first time in 1997. Since then, ASEAN has developed a roadmap for 18 interconnection projects. As of today, only 8 are already commercially operational. Through the APG, electricity can flow from where it is cheapest, cleanest, to where it is most needed, and regardless of national border. So this is the future of regional energy that are shared, sustainable, and smart. So let's talk about what it's mean in practice. Just want to highlight first, economic growth. Second, is attract infrastructure investment. Transmission projects across border are very complex and very capital intensive. We really need strong regional commitment so that it would. I have talked to many people. They say political will and commitment are key to become attractive, to investor and also private sector. So let me go back. I think the last point that I have to mention is this consumer benefit. That's key. Optimizing generation across the region will reduce electricity price and expand access to remote areas and accelerate electrification of transport and industry as well. There's statistics that have confirmed that APG is an economic multiplier. So basically, it will pay for itself many, many times over the years. So I think I should highlight beyond economic, there are also powerful technical argument for integration. APG enable real-time balancing. It's mean fewer blackouts, lower reserve requirements, and most importantly, it would support the integration of renewable energy. So let's look at the governance mechanism. So we are working on the APG Enhanced MOU. Actually, the team is working just nearby on working on finalizing the detail of this Enhanced MOU. So the MOU will be an overarching governance model for APG implementation across member states. With this new MOU, it would have expanded scope that will also include subsea cable and new financing mechanism. We're hoping to finalize this by this year, and we'll reside at the ministerial meeting later this year in mid-October. So it will be a turning point for implementation for APG. So let's talk briefly about how all this come together institutionally. As you see on the chart here, we have the ASEAN ministers on energy and senior official on energy, and SOMME. They would set the high-level policy direction. We got APGCC or APG Consultative Committee. They lead the execution and coordination, and EARNS, the ASEAN Energy Regulatory Network, that will ensure we have regulatory alignment. We got HAPOR, or the Power Utility and Authority, that would do plans and operation for the infrastructure. And the ASEAN Center for Energy, or AIDS, would serve as the APG Secretariat. For ASEAN Secretariat, we provide overall coordination across different sectoral bodies, including monitoring and reporting to the summit. Let's move on to something that has proved that this works. I would like to highlight the first one on the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore power integration project. Some of the representatives that involved in this project also in this room. So this is the first multilateral electricity trade in ASEAN. Laos PDR export hydropower all the way to Singapore via Thailand and Malaysia grid. So it showed that multiple country trade is technically and feasible and also economically viable. The second one is BIM, the Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines sub-region. This group is planning interconnections within the Borneo Island, and the goal is to unlock renewable potential of the remote areas. For example, in Philippines and Indonesia, it's planning on integrating geothermal, solar, and hydro energy resources across the borders. So let me now highlight a bit more in the iconic success story, I would say, of the LTMS. This one is the first time that the 4 countries within ASEAN has come together to trade electricity across borders. It's under a multilateral framework. So basically, the hydropower generation in Lao PDR, transmitted to Thailand and Malaysia national grid, all the way to Singapore. So this is not just a bilateral energy deal, even though a lot of bilateral negotiation, but it's a true regional integration milestone. So why this project is so important? First, it serves as a proof of concept. It's to really demonstrate that regional power trade is technically feasible, even with differing national grid system, market structure. If you talk to the technical team, the engineers and the grid operator from all the 4 countries collaborate. A lot in several areas, technical standards, safety protocols, load management procedure. Just to name a few. Second, this project really delivers tangible economic and environmental benefits. Singapore is importing low carbon electricity. Lao really earned the revenue from energy export. Thailand and Malaysia also benefit from transit fee and also enhance regional energy role. So it's really clear that all the 4 countries have shared value creation. However, we need to recognize all the challenges that were overcome. For example, harmonizing regulatory framework across the 4 countries. It took years of negotiations. Second, all the technical compatibility, real-time coordination across all these national borders would require not only advanced system, but also deep trust among all the operators. And most importantly, strong political will and pre-existing infrastructure were very critical enabler for this success. So LTMS PIP Phase 1, operated from 2022 to 2024, has now laid foundation for scaling up regional power trade, provide valuable lessons in institutional coordination, risk management, and also intergovernmental diplomacy. So I just want to highlight that this case proved that it's possible, it's profitable, but when countries come together with a shared purpose and long-term vision. So I just want to highlight, this is from AIDS, has summarized 3 key challenges and enablers: high-level political commitment, strong regional mandate, and we need innovative financing solution. Let me highlight that building APG infrastructure requires investment of about at least 764 billion. So DG Winfred, 10 million is not enough. For power generation transmission system through 2040, okay, the regional APG interconnector alone would need about 17 billion. Preparatory study would require additional of 90 million. And so basically, my responsibility are actually borrowing capital investment to build a grid line at each member states, but regional interconnector have not received sufficient priority. So that's why I have to highlight a lot on policy coordination, political will and commitment, and also funding, to really realize this interconnected APG. Now, let's allow me to maybe say a few words and lead to the later discussion on this most exciting development. Once again, I have to update my slides. Now you changed the name. It's APG Financing Initiative now, right? But still called APGF, right? So this platform aims to de-risk the investment through guarantees and blended finance, and also attract private capital alongside with the public and also development fund. So pleased to say that APGF is backed by ADB, the World Bank, and a number of national financing agencies so far. So it really represents a coordinated effort to mobilize the billions that we need required to realize the APG. As ASEAN Secretariat, as I has mentioned, APG really need coordination across different sectors and commitment, political will. So we aim to have the interface meeting, upcoming ministerial interface meeting, bringing together energy, finance, economic leader, and also central bank governor. So this is a very critical milestone, to highlight the importance of APG and also very high level support to generate a collective action towards mobilizing required funds for the APG. So this is my last slides. Looking forward, I think 4 priorities stand out. First, we need to scale up innovative financing model. The green bond, public-private partnership, climate funds. Second, we must invest in capacity building. I'm sorry to say this, we need it in this region. And also regional planning, not just the infrastructure, but also institution, talents, and all the system that related to APG. Last but not least, we need to reaffirm regional commitment. APG is not just technical project, it's a strategic imperative, climate action for economic growth and for regional solidarity. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kanchara, for your very insightful and comprehensive informative presentation. And I take note of the very informative the facts underway in terms of the governance structure inside ASEAN related to the APG. And also, I think that she has made a very clear case of the APG through various case studies, which can highlight how important and meaningful and impactful the APG project could be at the sub-regional and the country level. And also, she has also highlighted some challenges lying ahead, like the need to ensure the policy coordination and regulatory harmonization. On that front, I think the ADB not only contributing its own financing support, $10 billion. Mr. Kanchana has made some joke about that enough. But also, I think the ADB will try to catalyze the enormous amount of the private capital into this very important initiative. And also, ADB can contribute to the support of policy coordination and the technical compatibility and the regulatory harmonization at upstream level, which is very essential to transform this very promising vision into reality, as I believe. With that, I think that we are ready to listen to 3 presentations to be followed by the moderate panel discussion. The 3 presenters will be making presentation on the regional economic impact of the APG, followed by the country level case studies, which will be focusing on the Malaysia. And also, we will be listening to another presentation to learn about the EU experience on the grid integration. So our 3 speakers are first, the regional economic impact will be covered by James Villafuerte, who is our regional lead economist in the Southeast Asia Regional Department. And the Malaysia case study will be presented by my colleague Sanchita Basudasu, who is the economist at the Economic Cooperation Integration Division of the Economic Research Department. And then the EU experience will be shared by Mr. Olgards Vikstrand, who is the program manager of the international relationship of the European Commission. In that order, we'll be listening to the 3 presentations, which will be accounting for around 7 minutes for each presentation. So with that, I'd like to call Ms. James onto stage to make a presentation on the regional economic impact of the APG.
Good morning, everyone, and really happy to be here for the second time. The study that I will be presenting is an improvement of what I presented last year. So basically last year we did present the economic benefit, but it was a rush work. So for this year, we've improved the modeling aspect. We've also looked at the distributional aspect of the benefit. So can you put on the slide? So basically, I think the reason why we need the APG has already been discussed. I think the only addition that I would say is that what we are looking for, my simulation is up to 2030, is that from now to up to 2030, there's about 200 billion of investment requirement for grid interconnection plus actually investment in power generation. And I think ADB's contribution of 10 billion is about 5% of that. So it's not actually small. The second point I think that I would like to share is that there are 4 types of environmental costs that we are tracking closely in ASEAN. The first one, of course, is decarbonization. The next is natural resource depletion. Then we have waste. And finally is actually the impact of disaster. And if you look at, can you move on to the next slide? It's not working. If you look at the share of decarbonization in this cost, decarbonization, decarbonization is actually the second. Oh, it's jumping a lot. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm a bit nervous. But if you look at this slide, what it's saying is that decarbonization is actually the second largest environmental cost, accounting for about 20% of the cost for ASEAN. So this is not small. And it's quite important that APG is here to partly address that. I will skip about the update on the ASEAN Power Grid and go straight into the study. So I think the importance of the study is this is really looking more deeply into the economic benefit of the ASEAN Power Grid. And here, what we've done is actually to analyze 5 scenarios. The first scenario, which is the baseline scenario, is actually the middle of the road scenario of the 5 socioeconomic pathways that was estimated way back in 2015. So in this baseline scenario, we are assuming that the future actually repeats history. So there's a bit of improvement in climate target. There's a bit of improvement in technology. Some countries are doing better than the others, but it's basically a modeling true. So in the second scenario, this is where we actually incorporated extended transmission lines along the 18 transmission points identified by Director Kanchana. So we assume that this is completely built, but there's no trading of renewable energy. That's the second scenario. The third scenario, actually, we added the trading of renewable energy. We used the optimum assumption, the middle assumption of renewable energy. So that's the third scenario. In the fourth scenario, what we did was we assumed that the extended transmission lines are built and that there's an optimum trading of renewable energy. And on top of that, the ASEAN economies actually implement the NDC via a carbon tax. So that's the fourth scenario. The fifth scenario actually talks about a higher RE target. No? So that's the only difference between the fourth and the fifth. So now let's look at the results. So what this chart tells you, the first row is actually the impact on GDP and employment growth. And both, more or less, they're roughly the same. I did not split because the elasticity is about 1%. But what you can see here is as you move from scenarios 2 to 5, and calculate the deviation from the baseline, the economic impact of different implementation of the APG gives about 4.5 to 7.1% increase in GDP over the next 6 years to 2030. If you calculate that on an annual basis, that's about 0.9 to 1.2% increase. Now, scenario 2 actually tells you the economic impact of just laying the grid alone. So it's about 4.5%. You know? Now, when you allow trading of renewable energy on top of the APG, you get an additional of about 0.7%. No? Now, when you add onto that the implementation of NDC via carbon tax, you actually get an additional of about 1.5%. And what you can see, if you increase the RE trading from optimum to high, it increases by about 0.4, which means that the difference between increasing the RE target from optimum to high is actually very small. But it's quite important to note that the importance of doing APG along with NDC is quite large, because it actually increases your economic impact by about almost 22%. You can also see other results in terms of increase in the share of renewable energy in power, also the trading of renewable energy, and the decline in price of electricity and GHG emission. I will not elaborate, it's there. Now, the second result that we've looked into is split the net benefit of the ASEAN power grid in terms of net exporters and net importers of energy. So I'm just trying to understand who benefits more. And based on our simulation, whether you look at GDP or employment impact, the share of renewable, the share of renewable in trading, the decline in electricity prices, and the decline in GHG emission, it's clearly evident that the share of exporters, net exporters of energy, is slightly a bit larger than the share of importers, which is a good thing, because the exporters, which is mostly in the APG geography, the northern ASEAN region, which is actually the GMS, are the most important source of RE energy. So this is the second result. The next result that we did was to analyze the benefit of the ASEAN power grid in terms of three income groups. When I look at this green energy transition in the region, I can see three distinct groups which will actually transition differently. So the first group are actually the high-income economies of Brunei, Malaysia, and Singapore. Generally, they are high income, and they also have a very high contribution to the emission in the region. The second group actually are the middle and the upper middle income of Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. Their contribution to emission is not big, but their emission levels are actually rising very, very high, and their economic growth are also rising very high. The third group are actually the income of low-income economies in ASEAN, and they are the ones with very low, minimal, negligible contribution on emission, but their contribution in terms of possible renewable energy is quite large, and their income level are quite small. So in terms of the GDP share, if you look at, just think about the GDP share of these three groups, the high income comprise around 23% of the regional GDP. The low income comprise roughly around 6 to 7%. No? So then the middle income is actually the big one. But when you look at the gains, the share of these groups in the benefit, what's very clear is that the small income economy in Southeast Asia will actually benefit a lot. No, so they're capturing almost 12 to 21% of the benefit in the different simulation, which tells me that the income intensity, the income intensity of the impact for low income is actually quite high. And here, the upper income, Singapore and Malaysia in particular, are also largely capturing a larger part of the benefit compared to their income share. Remember, their income share is about 23%. Here, they're capturing about 32 to 36%. Now, I would say that this economic impact estimation may actually be overestimated. Why? Because number one, we have assumed that the actual expansion in trade is commensurate to the actual expansion in grid capacity. In the real world, there will be hurdles to the expansion of trade. That's the first one. In this model, because this is computable general equilibrium model, we assume full price convergence. We assume that prices of electricity in the entire region will be equal. I know that in the Europeans' case, I'm sure the market structure in terms of electricity trade will not give you full price convergence. And the third one is we did not incorporate the cost of investment and the adjustment cost of building the transmission of the APG. Now, to discuss a bit more, there are three sources where these benefits come from. So the first source of the benefit is basically the trade effect. So when you build the ASEAN power grid, you allow the trading of energy, and that gives actually a trade effect. The second effect actually is an income effect, particularly if you adopt an NDC, because in an NDC, when you collect a carbon tax, you have an additional income that you can actually distribute. But the biggest effect that we've realized in this study is actually the allocative effect because of relative price changes. When you open the ASEAN power grid to energy trading, the relative prices of sectors actually change, and that brings a lot of the benefit. Now, there are three basic, I think, reform agenda that needs to happen for this APG to be realized. And the first one, Director Kanchana mentioned the importance of collaboration and partnership. That collaboration and partnership will actually build credible commitment. It will build trust, which is important for this realization of the benefit. The second one is the strategic investment plan that's needed to actually look at all the nuts and bolts in terms of how to bring about the APG. The last one is actually a flexible market mechanism because in our region, particularly, it's an ASEAN culture that we have to be flexible, multi-track, and multi-speed. And we know that this APG will move forward in different parts, bilateral, multi-power trading arrangement, and then the full integration. But the last thing that I will also emphasize is knowledge, regional cooperation, capacity building matters. So with that, I will leave you with a concluding message. I think Vinny said momentum has to transition into action, action into success. And when you analyze electricity consumption, it's highly correlated to poverty reduction. So I think with success, it will also lead to poverty reduction. Thank you, and back to you, Jong-woo.
Good morning, everyone. Following my colleague James's presentation on the regional impact of the APG, I will take you with very prelim findings for a national study looking at Malaysia. So often in regional cooperation, we say there is at the regional level, everyone gains. But at the national level, there could be some short-term challenges, and we need to understand that and maybe identify some policy and regulatory gaps and also suggest some policy ideas on how to mitigate or address the challenges. So this study is basically looking at APG from Malaysia's perspective. Next slide, please. Sorry. Yeah. So the first thing is like we are repeatedly saying like the political will, the intention of the countries who are part of the APG. And so far, what can we say about Malaysia? Is it even like standing on the fence to be a success case study for APG? And so first couple of slides will be talking on that. So Malaysia currently covers 7 APG interconnection projects and 1 national grid project between Sarawak and Peninsular Malaysia. The interconnections of APG links Malaysia to Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Malaysia has strengthened its role in Southeast Asia's clean energy trade. The country has made commitment in its with 100 megawatt supply to Singapore, alongside participation in the LTMS PIP, which we are hearing in Kanchana's slide, and a new 50 megawatt RE flow to Singapore. So these actions showcases Malaysia's intention and commitment for APG initiative and to transfer it to a reality. So in this, just for a very brief overview of the Malaysia power sector, the key thing is there is heavy reliance on the fossil fuel, and hydrocarbon has picked up pace recently. But it's the fossil fuel that contributes to large part of CO2 emission in Malaysia. So on the left-hand side chart, you will see like as of 2022, more than 80% of Malaysia's power generation mix is sourced from the fossil fuels. Renewable energy only constitute less than 1/5 of its power supply. On the right-hand side, you will see among the renewables, there is a rising trend for hydroelectric power, which had a sharp increase since 2017. So as a result of the electricity sector is a major contributor of CO2 emission in Malaysia. So for APG, I will say Malaysia has the right incentive to move to clean energy. And Malaysia also has shown its intention through its various policy document. It is aware of its potential of renewable energy and has made strong commitments in different policy documents. So few of them I'm sharing here. Malaysia has targeted a net zero future by 2050. In its latest submission of NDCs, Malaysia has unconditionally targets to reduce its carbon intensity against GDP by 45% in 2030 and another 60% in 2035. As of 2023, its carbon intensity of GDP has gone down. This is 27% lower than the corresponding 2005 intensity. So some strategic initiatives to achieve the target is to increase the share of renewable energy capacity to 40% by 2035, and this is mentioned in Malaysia's renewable energy roadmap. So all this together supports APG as it raises the possibility of clean energy trade in the region. Finally, one more slide on Malaysia's positive intention, or there is a full commitment of Malaysia. Building of the RE capacity is yet to pick up pace. Malaysia is engaged in power trade with Thailand, Indonesia, and Singapore, but most of it is in the fossil fuel. So APG does have a role to play in raising the country's potential to RE production and trade. So looking at the current trade of RE energy capacity, it indicates some challenges. As of 2022, there were only about 9 gigawatt of installed RE capacity in the country. Also, despite the large potential for solar, only about 1.38 gigawatt capacity additions were achieved from 2019 to 2022. Malaysia, like I said, engages in electricity trade, but a lot of it is in the fossil fuel. So APG again fills the gap in raising the country, use the country's potential and also raise its capacity in RE trade. So what are we doing here? We heard a very nice regional study by exporter-importer, and then we also heard about the income level of countries. So now what we want to understand, we have two objectives for the country level studies. First is to understand the socio-economic benefits for Malaysia from being part of APG and being part of power trade and exports with the neighboring country. The second is to identify policy and regulatory challenges for power trade with neighboring countries. This can be found in, say, quality of infrastructure, because for trade, both sides, the infrastructure needs to be of the right quality. Standards, regulatory decision, and others. So that's the objective of undertaking this complementary study with the regional one. So this is a model that my colleague was talking about a while ago. I will not go into detail, but basically GTAP model is kind of a language, where data is a common language, and we use kind of for trade policy analysis, which has been further advanced with the environment and sustainability issues. So the scenarios for the regional and the national are almost similar. We are looking at 5 scenarios, 4 scenarios listed here. The baseline is, of course, the baseline business as usual. And so Malaysia just performs as it is doing now, or in as it was doing in the past. Scenario 1 is Malaysia develops RE for itself. So it increases the capacity, but we don't see much trade. Scenario 2, there is low RE trade. And scenario 3, there is the optimum level. And scenario 4 is there is optimum level plus there is a carbon tax. And we analyze the percent deviation from the 2030 baseline. And by this is kind of a result we are trying to show. This is the black line is the baseline, where it's the nothing happens, and then the scenario 1 to 4 is the kind of somewhere the red line. While we will planning to do for simulation for until 2040, but at the moment it's only till 2030, and this is very, very prelim results. And at the moment, I'm showing you only 2 scenarios. And scenario 2, if you see even the boosting of renewables for the domestic purpose in Malaysia to meet NDC targets with low level of trade in RE through the APG can have more macroeconomy and sectoral gains. And here the outputs are divided just for the RE sector and as well as the macroeconomy of the country. For the scenario 4, the gains are higher, where there is higher share of clean energy trade and carbon tax also kicks in. But of course, this is not enough. We will be digging deeper. So broadly, the conclusion of this result is greater the integration with the grid, higher the economic gains for Malaysia, even at a macro level, but mostly driven by the huge gains in the RE sector, translating into the boost of both manufacturing and services sector. The main channel for these positive effects are greater productivity, lower power prices, and higher competitiveness of all sectors. But of course, these are just, we are talking about, everything is looking very positive at the moment, but the details, the devils will be lying in the details. And that's why we plan to expand the study to look at a bit more things at granular level, like who could be the potential losers and which will be these industries, how will people be affected? Because we need to understand what's the impact for the people, the household income, the farm income, skilled and non-skilled income. So these are the impact we also want to understand, and to have a bit more granular understanding of the impact of the APG on Malaysia and subsequently on other Southeast Asian countries, and accordingly provide the policy recommendations. Challenges. So we are hearing, like I said, no public policy is there without challenges. Public policy have both pluses and minuses. It's for the governments, people like us, to understand what the positive and suggest ways how we can inform the government to address the challenges. So just a few, the idea is to understand what are the linkages Malaysia needs to do, which are the countries, and with those countries, what are the challenges. So domestic grid is important to promote cross-border electricity trade. And if I see the case of Malaysia, the domestic grid is around 60 years old, and its hydropower resources are in the Borneo. So it needs to be yet to be connected to the Peninsular Malaysia. The domestic grid needs substantial investment. There is a need for increase the links for the energy trade. So we have country like Laos, which has some 20 links, while Malaysia has currently 2. So we need to improve on that. Then we have the issues related to subsea cables. Subsea cable cross-border transmission is more complicated than the overland ones, particularly for say in case of Malaysia, the legal framework is still fragmented. It is, and it's overlapping also, and some of them are quite old, like the Merchant Shipping Ordinance, Exclusive Economic Zone Act, Communication and Multimedia Act, and Environment Quality. All these are designed for certain purpose, but they need to be now aligned for the energy infrastructure. So that need to be addressed. Also, there are regulatory complications, like subsea cables require permit not just for energy transmission, but for seabed use, environmental impact assessment, coastal zoning compliance. So it's easy to say these are the benefits, but to translate the benefits to real action, lot of these, the regulatory issues, understanding of the regulatory issues is very important. So connecting Malaysia with Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines through these 7 interconnection may face challenges in terms of power systems that are diverse in their standards, specification, and protocols for electricity transmission and distribution. Hence, for trade of electricity across borders from Malaysia to other ASEAN countries will require increased technical harmonization and operational procedures for the power systems going forward. So this is something, a short summary table derived from other studies for the case of LTMS PIP, which like Dr. Kanchana also mentioned, kind of a pathfinder for the region. And of course, the 3 challenges are categorized as technical, political, and institutional and capacity challenges. I will not go through each of them, but most important of all of this is the political willingness. Are we ready to work together? Are we ready to show that ASEAN countries' regional integration can be observed through ASEAN Power Grid? It's a tangible case studies. So that political will, that regional cooperation is more important than ever. And it's not ASEAN Power Grid. ASEAN Power Grid feeds into the economic activities of the ASEAN countries. ASEAN Power Grid tells the foreign investors that we are a lot more competitive today than we were pre-power grid. It's a key infrastructure for the region. It's not transport infrastructure, but it's electricity infrastructure. So it adds up to ASEAN's overarching goal of building a coherent and very comprehensive ASEAN economic community. And I think that's what we need to understand, and why an ASEAN economic community to attract greater foreign direct investment in the region, help countries to plug into the global value chain, and also, of course, raise international trade. So ASEAN Power Grid is just a tool, and we need to see how ASEAN Power Grid is fitting into the overarching goal of ASEAN overall economic competitiveness. So these are a few things we are planning to do, and we were planning to cover a few more country studies like Indonesia, Thailand, and others. We may undertake some thematic studies looking at community impact with a case study approach, lessons learned from other regional power markets. And we are planning to work with other knowledge partners in the region to bring a single voice to the policymakers in the region. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Olger Sviksna from European Commission, and I'm happy to share the European experience of grid integration and market development of the past 30 years. I will take a slightly less time for my presentation than that, so let's start with where we are coming from. So the European grids before 1990s were isolated national grids where the national monopolies handled both the production and transmission with very little cross-border exchanges. And this you could see impacted the energy supply systems in the times of energy crisis. We can take examples of UK in the 70s, for example, where due to minor strikes and oil prices, there was not enough electricity, and load shedding was introduced. Even a 3-day working week was introduced, which could have been avoided if there would be electricity supply coming from neighboring countries. Or we can take France in 1980s, where due to cold spell, the energy demand was so high that it was not enough even with the nuclear power generators there. And this could be also avoided if there would be much better exchange of electricity from the neighboring countries. Of course, there is a recent example of Portugal and Spain, where we had just a few months before quite a substantial blackout. And one can say, look, you have this whole market, and why is this still happening there? But you have to see the geography where it is. In fact, Spain and Portugal are still an electricity island and very, very weakly connected to France due to geography, due to mountainous areas between the countries. So if it would be better interconnected, okay, we're waiting still for the reports, but we think that it could be avoided. So this is where we're coming from, and this was also realized by European Commission. And in '96, we proposed the first electricity package, meaning that we were opened the electricity market for competition. This was followed by 2003 and 2009 energy packages, which pushed for more interconnection, for more integration, and for the unbundling of generation from the transmission. We created also core institutions like Agency for Cooperation of Energy Regulators and European Network of Transmission System Operators for Electricity, which are meant to regulate and support the market. And through this opening of the market, creating the institutions, we saw the start of cross-border interconnections being built. And by 2025, we count around 430 interconnectors across the EU. To support that, we developed policies like the Trans-European Networks for Energy Policy and the concept of projects of common interest. And this allowed us to build the backbone of electricity market, which is obviously the grid. What is European Commission's role in this? So the European Commission, where I'm working, we are leading on the policy design, and we are proposing the legislation. So we are creating the ideas how the market should work. We are proposing it, and then it goes obviously to European Parliament and the member states who are deciding on it. And through the created institutions like ACER and ENSO-E, it ensures that the regulatory compliance is met, and also data exchange is there and transparency is ensured. Now, coming to a very important point is cross-border infrastructure planning. How does that work? The main actor in this is the European Network of Transmission System Operators, who coordinates the whole exercise. It starts with definition of scenarios, where we put the decarbonization goals, then we identify the needs which are there to meet those goals, and then the project collection starts. The project collection is coming actually from the national transmission system operators, who are proposing projects to be included in the 10-year network development plan. This 10-year network development plan is updated every 2 years. And the latest one is from 2024, which shows that there is a need of 584 billion by 2030 for infrastructure investments, even if I showed before the grid is quite interconnected already. And after the project collection from the national TSOs, ENSO-E is doing the cost-benefit analysis, and using the results of cost-benefit analysis, the 10-year network development plan is created with a list of projects which are needed to be implemented in the short term, medium, and long term. And now let's go to the market part. So how does that work? Here you can see the picture of the past, how it was before we opened the markets. So you had typically the vertically integrated company, which handled everything: generation, transmission, distribution, and retail. And after opening the market, we have liberalized markets on the generation side. We have open markets on the retail side, but of course transmission and distribution is a natural monopoly, so it is regulated by the national regulators, which are independent regulators. How then the open market works? We have different markets. We have the forward and futures market. We have day-ahead market, intraday market, and of course the real-time balancing market, which is needed to keep the system stable. The market coupling harmonizes the trading. It gives the price convergent and is more efficient for dispatching reasons. But what I want to show on this slide is also that it just not happened that we, drew the regulation, we adopted the regulation, and suddenly there was the market. It was a slow development starting in Western Europe. Actually starting with bilateral trade between few countries, and then it expanded. As you see, it came from the Western Europe, then some other countries joined, then we had the North Pool created in Scandinavia, then the Iberian Peninsula market joined, and slowly with the regional markets emerging, the single European market was created. So this is an example that it makes sense to start small, and then following this example and seeing the benefits of the cross-border trade, you slowly build up a functioning market covering the whole region. So, and what are then the reasons to integrate the markets and to build the interconnections? I think this was already mentioned yesterday and also today. I mean, there are three main reasons: the economic efficiency, security, and sustainability. And obviously, the well-functioning and well-interconnected market reduces the prices of electricity by increasing a competition. And one of the main reasons of economic benefits is that you reduce the need to build capacities in each country to cover your demand, but you can share the capacities and build the capacities in the countries where it is economically most viable. And if you see under the graph under the economic efficiency part, that shows that the price volatility is much lower in the integrated market than in a non-integrated market. Of course, the grid integration and market gives also the security of supply benefits, because you can use the resources for the adequacy and the system resilience, and you get more independent from fossil fuels, which leads us to the sustainability component, and as it was mentioned also before, it allows you to build the renewable energy sources where it's the best, and not necessarily next to the demand centers, but where it makes sense. But you can easily trade the electricity generated in North Sea to be used in Italy, for example. And doing better integration of renewable energy sources, you generate less CO2 emissions, which also adds to the sustainability. Recently, there was a study done by ENSO-E, and which shows that there are 9 billion economic benefits in generation savings per year. I think it was also mentioned in the ASEAN context, if you look at it, the GDP here in EU would be boosted by 100 billion. You have more tax revenues because of trading, and the grid projects, supporting the grid projects, you create jobs. In European case, it's 1.6 million additional jobs. For the security of supply, we see that it could double our security of supply and give greater flexibility during crisis, which I mentioned at the very beginning. So the redundancy could reduce the possibilities of blackouts. Very quickly of the regulatory and financial frameworks we have the Trans-European Network for Energy Regulation, which sets rules for identification of the projects of common interest. These are the projects which are considered the most important for decarbonization and security of supply and integration of renewables. Those projects are getting favorable treatment in permitting and also in funding. So there are special funds like so-called Connecting Europe facility, which could give subsidies to those projects so that they are implemented rapidly and can contribute to integration of renewables. So what could we offer for the ASEAN power grid? Of course, we can offer our lessons learned from the market integration, especially in terms of regulatory convergence, innovation, and also the technology, because in Europe we have a lot of experience, for example, with subsea cables. And of course, we're also ready to contribute financially, maybe support pre-feasibility studies, prepare bankable projects, and we are ready to support also project implementation. So what are the lessons learned from our experience? So I think one is that we need to have a political willingness, shared vision, and mutual trust. And mutual trust is very important, that countries don't think only about their own security supply and saying that everything what I have in my country is only for me, but to have an integrated market so that you can trust that in times of the crisis, your neighbor could help you. You need for that a functioning governance and cooperation platforms, and of course, robust regulatory mechanisms to jointly assess costs and benefits, which is very important. If you think about an interconnector which goes from one country to another, and you would be building 10 kilometers of interconnector in one country, 100 in the other, how do you split the costs between those two? Is it 50-50? Is it according to the kilometers in a country? We have a different approach. We look at the costs and the benefits, and we do the cross-border cost allocation. I can tell about it more, but not today. And furthermore, of course, there is important cooperation on developing the plans and following the plans, following the progress of the implementation of the plans. So in a nutshell, the increasing grid connectivity and market integration gives more efficiency, security, flexibility, resilience of the power system. Of course, also in Europe, there are still challenges. One is the need for the faster permitting, which is still an obstacle. And of course, there is the challenge of the digitalization. But I think that building the mutual trust and building the political willingness, it is possible to do it anywhere in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the very interesting presentation made by three speakers in a row. So we are actually quite behind schedule. So now let me ask we are supposed to have a panel discussion as the last segment of this session. So now let me ask the moderator and all three panelists to be on stage. So while they are coming on the stage, I'll try to introduce very briefly. The moderator of this panel session will be Ms. Hyun-Jung Lee, who is the principal energy economist of our sector department. She plays a key role in the advanced regional energy cooperation integration to support long-term regional energy security and sustainability in Southeast Asia. And our three other panelists are the first Mr. Dennis Umlas, who is the senior science research specialist of the Power Planning and Development Division of the Department of Energy of the Philippines. And then the next, Mr. George Skipper, who is the CEO and the Lucitia Group and the Chief Strategy Advisor of the Green Grids Initiative. And last but not least, Mr. Adoracion Navarro, who is the Senior Fellow, Philippine Institute for Development Studies. So with that, I look forward to interesting and interactive panel discussions among esteemed panelists. Over to you, Hyun-Jung.
Okay, thank you very much, Jong-woo. Good morning to you all. So we just heard very rich presentations from very eminent speakers. So basically the keywords is political commitment, also the economic multipliers and benefits, especially from the integrated grid and markets. And then also we learned a lot from the European experience. Yes, it's a bit of unfortunate. Actually, we are a bit of running out of time, so we just make it quite quick. But we'd like to get your reflections and then also insight related to this topic. So we have three very eminent also panelists from the global experiences. I'd like to introduce George Skipper. She's from the Green Grid Initiatives. And I'd like to maybe start the questions with you first, given your global experiences in really kind of accelerating the grid investment for this renewable, also integrated world. So maybe given the kind of presentations that we heard, what are your key reflections? Also, what are the key expected benefits from the ASEAN power grid, based on the global experiences? And then what are the key challenges do you think is we should think ahead and to address?
Thank you so much, HJ, and thank you so much for hosting this really important panel. I think just building on the last presentation that we heard from and adding the additional global context, we're seeing that APG is not alone. 80 million kilometres of grids and transmissions still need to be built globally to meet the tripling of net zero target. And that really puts into perspective just globally what is happening in this landscape. But as the GGI, which is a global convener on grids and interconnectors, we have working groups across Africa, Asia Pacific, soon to launch one in Latin America. We see that the APG has enormous opportunity and actually really is world leading in terms of the comparative advantages here in Southeast Asia. But how to unlock that? I think, we've heard a lot about the economic benefits, which are really important, and the consistent challenges being political will. Political will equals economic benefits. Whenever anyone says to you there's a political will challenge, that means go and find the economic benefits. I used to work for a renewable energy developer company, Sun Cable, which was building the power connector between Australia and Singapore. And in order to be able to build the political will for that project, we looked at localizing the economic benefits. So across the transmission line that was overhead, we had 60 clans of indigenous population that we needed to look at. What are the economic benefits there? In Indonesia, we passed through 4 provinces. What are the economic benefits? And building out that economic package of benefits is actually the unlocker of how to build political consensus and support for these sorts of projects. I think the other thing just to add in as well is that the additional complexity is the capital costs, the capex costs of these projects are enormous. And it's so wonderful to see the ADB's recent announcement and its commitment to the APG, because this is really what is required to accelerate and unlock additional private sector finance. Another example of what we dealt with in terms of actually looking at building these projects in the region and subsea cables is doing subsea surveys. Enormous capital expenditure costs for those projects, and the wealth of what you collect from that information and the benefits of that are significant. But what would it look like if we could share those costs or share information and actually unlock systems level benefits across the APG? So I think, reflecting on the presentations we've heard, the time is now for APG and Southeast Asia to really mobilise on this opportunity. The economic benefits are very clear in terms of building an integrated power system. Integrated power systems mean integrated energy security systems, which means integrated resilience for the region. And that means that you can future-proof against issues to do with weather events, trade shocks, and those sorts of areas. It's really important to really accelerate the work on this. I was reflecting on those presentations and looking at those scenarios and the fabulous research and the scenario analysis. And I was thinking, what is the alternative here to building the APG? I'm not sure that there is one, but the alternative is just time. It's just how quickly can we actually work together to do this? And if we're slow, then the result is just less economic benefit, an increase in emissions, and not future-proofing fast enough to withstand those shocks. And so by working together more collaboratively and at a faster speed, there is a significant opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, George. Such a powerful message. There's no alternative than APG in this world. So I think I'd like to also then maybe move to more country-specific context, because there are enough justification evidence on the impact and benefit of the APG, and then also similar initiatives in other regions. Now, each also member states and the Southeast Asia also time to also make a bold decision and the move for the next stage. And in this regard, we actually have representatives from the Department of Energy and the Philippines. Philippines is incoming chair for ASEAN next year. So Dennis Omlas, thank you very much for joining this panel. And I would like to ask, given Philippines is now incoming chair ASEAN 2026, can you share the opportunities emerging from the Philippines with regard to the ASEAN power grid? Also, like to ask maybe what would it take for a country leader to commit to investing in the cross-border infrastructure project?
Thank you, HJ. Thank you, HJ. As the incoming ASEAN chair in 2026, the Philippines is well positioned to chair the regional power integration project in the ASEAN power grid. In the clean energy scenario of the Philippine Energy Plan, we have 2 scenarios, one being 90 gigawatt of offshore wind is projected by 2050, and 50 megawatt of offshore wind by 2050 in the clean energy scenario 2. So by that, we could benefit from being a clean energy hub and exporter of excess renewable energy to the ASEAN power grid. And for the I can think of three factors, assuming a country leader has tackled the technical and other factors. One being it should have the national benefit case, not only the hosting country that will export the energy, but also the receiving countries, all parties involved in the interconnection, whether through reduced energy cost or another revenue stream. It's important that all parties would benefit from the interconnection. Another is the harmonized institutional framework, specifically the different grid codes and the regulation should be harmonized. I think next week, ACE will be discussing their study regarding these factors, and the energy resource among ASEAN countries is being harmonized. And lastly, again, as mentioned by the presenters, the strong political will. Unique to Southeast Asia is the ASEAN chairmanship. It can be used to leverage the key officials from ASEAN member states to discuss these projects, the benefit of it, how could it benefit the host country and neighboring countries, and proceed towards achieving the goal of each country and the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it's very important that actually the benefits are also grounded in each country's context and also has to be owned by the leaders and then also the stakeholders within the country. So while working maybe on an ASEAN level, also the visions, political commitment, our effort also has to be come together in parallel, also to work with each country's from their point of views and the prioritizations and then understanding benefits and etc. So we are very excited really hear about the Philippines vision and ambition, and I would like to really continue this dialogue to work together to realize these benefits in the Philippines. Then the last but not least, also Dr. Adoracion Narabo, Philippines Institute for the Development Studies, especially would like to have your reflections and insight relate to the benefits and to the communities, how economic dividend can be co-shared across the communities, especially in the marginalized areas as well.
Thank you, HJ, and thank you to ADB for inviting me to this very important workshop. The last time I looked at this kind of a regional cooperation for an ASEAN power grid was in 2013 to 2014 when I became part of a group of ASEAN think tanks looking at the energy market integration in the region. And now that I got to participate here, I noticed that the benefits that are estimated are the same. Of course, the figures change, and also the challenges are the same. But I would like to highlight the impacts on community, the community level impacts. Of course, there are positive impacts. We've heard, energy poverty reduction through electrification, and we also know the price effects, the wealth effects, as explained by James earlier. But there are also direct community level impacts, local employment, stimulation of local industries, not only during construction, but during operation. And there are also knowledge build up and investment coordination that will happen, which will free up more public and private resources for programs that are targeting the poor. But there could be adverse impacts as well. There could be environmental disruption. There could be social displacement due to community resettlement, community relocation. And there could also be land use conflicts, especially in areas where indigenous peoples, indigenous communities live, and there are other private claimants on the land. And I think ADB and other development finance institutions and the participating governments should be ready for this. Not to mention the distributional impacts. By the way, for the distributional impacts, there could be policy improvements in participating governments. In the Philippines, we already have what's called ER1-94 policy, which gives direct financial resources to host communities of energy resource development and power generation projects. There's a formula for that. A certain amount of pesos per kilowatt hour generated is carved out and used in three kinds of fund: for missionary electrification fund, for what I need to remember, reforestation, watershed management, and the health and the environment fund, and livelihood and development fund. So for those three kinds of funds. So I think ADB and the other MDBs could catalyze governments to have this kind of policy. And first, you need to have an inventory of what kinds of policies for fixing the distribution of benefits are out there. And after getting that inventory, again, gather the participating governments and whether you can have a harmonization of policies or just have an exchange of lessons to be learned in these community level policies, in these policies that will directly benefit our communities, then that will be good.
Thank you very much. This very important point indeed. Actually, policy design aspect has to be also integrated. The design of the also the APG programs for maybe each country to ensure that all the benefits are also co-shared across the communities and economy. I think we are actually running out of time, therefore maybe cannot really afford the questions or comments and reflections from the floor. Of course, we very much happy to have interactions maybe during the break, and like to also request maybe our panelists to be made available for any questions and comments afterwards. With this, I'd like to close this panel discussion and hand over to our MC, Dr. Jong-woo. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, HJ, and all the esteemed panelists for your insightful feedback and reflections on the implication and important policy angles related to the APG. So with that, we have come to the end of this session on the very important agenda topic of the APG. And now I'd like to invite my colleague, Mr. Keiju Mitsuhashi, who is the Energy Director of the Sector Department, to wrap up this session with his closing remarks.
Thank you very much for participating today. And then speakers and panelists, thank you so much for your sharing your views and ideas. And then it was a very, very rich discussion we had today. Thank you very much. Following this, please have a break, but please come back. We'll have a very interesting discussion on how to attract private sector financing, how to de-risk, and how to support all this among the different stakeholders. So please have a break, and then please come back for the next agenda on